Welcome everyone to the November regular meeting of the Calgary Police Commission. I would like to call this meeting to order and ask that everyone ensure their microphones are muted until you need to speak. My name is Sean Cornett and I am Chair of the Commission. Present from the Commission are Commissioners Amtal Siddiqui, Susan Mallon, Kim Lynch-Proctor's online, Heather Campbell, Teresa Rossell, TJ Sang will be joining us later, and Jeff French. We're also pleased today to be introducing two new members to our commission, Commissioner Cherie Nissan Jordan and Councillor Jennifer Wyness. You both bring new and unique backgrounds to our commission, and we are really grateful that you have decided to offer your skills, expertise, and passion to our team. So thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to both of you. The Calgary Police Service representatives are led by Chief Constable Mark Neufeld. Chief, would you please introduce those you expect to speak during today's meeting?
Thanks, Chair. It's Superintendent Joe Brar. I can do that on behalf of the Chief. So today with us, we have on the first presentation, Sergeant Mark Schwartz and guest Eric Flinton. And then for the crime updates, we have Deputy Chief Topic and Deputy Chief Cook. And for the anti-racism action plan, we have Deputy Chief McCullen, who may join us virtually. She sends her regrets. She was not feeling well today, so she's off. So we might cover off of that for her.
Thank you very much and welcome. For those not familiar with our role, the Calgary Police Commission is a body of 10 community members and 2 city councillors appointed by City Council. We provide independent citizen governance and oversight of the Calgary Police Service on behalf of all Calgarians. To protect the political neutrality of the police, Alberta's Police Act requires that the police chief report directly to us instead of City Council. We provide direction to the service through the chief, police policies, monitoring of the police complaint process, and approval of how the police budget is spent. Today is one of 8 regular meetings we have each year to openly discuss police governance and oversight matters with the service's leadership and to hear from the public. We also have several private monthly committee meetings where commissioners work more directly with the service on various matters that cannot be discussed publicly. Our commission meeting today is on the traditional territory of Niitsitapi, made up of Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations. The Arahe Nakota, comprised of Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. These are the people who made a treaty with the Crown, forming Treaty 7 territory. The City of Calgary is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We are committed to doing our part to address the inequity and intergenerational trauma caused by past and current wrongs to support reconciliation with all Indigenous people in our community. Our commission also condemns racism and prejudice in all forms and is committed to being anti-racist. We stand in solidarity with our colleagues, families, and citizens who are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color. For those of you joining us for the first time, allow me to provide a brief overview of the meeting format. The public session of this meeting is being live streamed, and a recording will be posted online so that we can make it available to those unable to attend. There will be several presentations from City Police Service, the commission members, and commission staff. Commissioners will have a chance to ask questions or make comments after each one. Once we've completed the presentations, we will move to the public participation portion of the meeting. Those who are registered will speak when they are called on by name and have a chance to either ask a question or make a presentation for our consideration. Following the public participation, we will close the public portion of the meeting with the chief and I taking questions from the media. Everyone is welcome to observe the media availability, but only media can participate. To start our agenda items, I will now call for declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest from the commissioners. Hearing no declarations, I will now ask for approval of the agenda. Does any member of the commission wish to request an amendment to the agenda? Hearing none, I will now ask for approval of the consent agenda. For those viewing today's meeting, the consent agenda is a list of routine items and reports that all commissioners agree can be accepted without more discussion or a separate vote. Does any member of the commission wish to request an item on the consent agenda be brought forward for discussion? Hearing none, I declare both the agenda and the consent agenda approved as presented. This month has been another busy one for our commission, and so I have a lot I want to touch on in my chair's report. I want to start by acknowledging that November marks several important days. Canada's Indigenous peoples were honored through Métis Week and Inuit Day. Transgender Day of Remembrance was also marked this month to remember those who have lost their lives to violence targeting them because of their gender identity. And of course, our nation once again remembered and honored those who gave their lives to defend our freedoms during Remembrance Day and National Indigenous Veterans Day. We are grateful to all those who have served in our armed forces, including our very own Commissioner, North Pagan. November also saw several months of work on the next 4-year police budget. It finally came to a conclusion when City Council approved our proposed budget last Friday. Our commission was very active in the creation of the 4-year police budget, and there was significant back and forth with the service over the last 8 months to ensure that the request put to council was fiscally responsible and reflective of what Calgarians want and supportive of a safe city. We relied on many inputs, including council's strategic direction, the priorities Calgarians identified in our annual citizen surveys, and the zero-based review of the police resources done by external consultants in 2018 to ensure the service is operating as efficiently as possible. Our commission also brought our own knowledge gained from closely monitoring the police budget over the last 4 years. Our Finance and Audit Committee, whose members have exceptional technical skills and F&A experience, meets at least 8 times a year to ensure that we have a strong grasp on where police funding is going and why. We were assisted in this important role by both internal and external auditors. The 2023 service plan and budget balances the need for police funding to keep up with increasing demands and our desire to reduce the types of calls police are dispatched to over the long term. The funding will also help better support those who serve by addressing issues that are undermining morale and making workloads unmanageable. We are grateful to Council for making the needed investments in policing, and we are grateful to all the people at the service who worked hard to help put this budget submission together. Our commission is also committed to improving the transparency around the police budget as we move forward, so that all Calgarians can be confident that public funds are being managed well. Currently, summaries of our budget and some of the background can be found on the Calgary Police Commission's webpage. Last month, I announced that 2 commissioners were leaving us, and this month I would like to thank a 3rd member that also decided not to continue with us. Councillor Giancarlo Carra served on the commission for the past 2 years and was a passionate advocate for police reform and our anti-racism work. We are grateful for the time and effort he dedicated to this work and look forward to continuing to work with him on City Council. Council has selected another council to take his place, and they will be publicly announced once security clearances are completed. Today also marks the beginning of a new year for our commission. So Happy New Year, everyone. Our commission held our annual organizational meeting before the start of this meeting and reappointed almost all the same vice chairs and committee chairs. The only change is that Commissioner Amtul Siddiqui will be taking over as chair of our anti-racism committee. Thank you to all commission members who will be dedicating their time and energy to the work of the commission this coming year. Finally, I want to acknowledge several officers that were recognized for their work this past month. 8 members of the service were recognized by MAD Canada with Corporal Cummings Watch Award for going above and beyond to remove impaired drivers from our roadways. An additional 5 officers were also recognized by the Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police for making significant contributions to policing in our province and to our community. On behalf of the entire commission, Congratulations to all of these officers, and thank you for the outstanding work you've done. Members of the service have also carried a heavy load again this past month. The service has investigated several serious hit and runs, including a fatal one. Investigators have solved quickly one homicide and laid charges in an older one. They've charged a man in a child luring incident, taken countless drugs and firearms off our streets, laid charges related to pharmacy robberies and a contractor fraud, and held people accountable for assaults on our transit system. At the same time, members were dealing with the emotional toll of seeing the end of the trail for the driver who killed Sergeant Andrew Harnett, having a fellow officer shot in the line of duty. We're all relieved and grateful that the officer shot at the end of October was not killed. There have been far too many recent examples from across our country of how much worse that situation could have been. We wish him a speedy recovery, and both he and his family will continue to be in our thoughts. Thank you to all members of the service for your work and dedication this past month. It is noticed and appreciated. With that, I conclude my chair's report and will turn it over to the Calgary Police Service to share with us the work they're doing with partners through the Drug Treatment Court. I'll just make a note that there are two people from the Calgary Police Service Digital Services team who are going to record this presentation for use in the future. So Chief, can you please go ahead with your presentations?
Happy to introduce this first one, or at least to turn it over to Deputy McClellan, who's online. She'll actually make the introduction itself. I think this will be a really good presentation, which you'll enjoy.
Chief, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Sergeant Mark Schwartz and Mr. Eric Flinton. Many of you know that I've got restorative justice under my portfolio, and in that is included the Indigenous Court, the Youth Diversion Court, and the Calgary Drug Treatment Court. I can tell you that I've been very, very honored to meet many of these graduates, and we just have a phenomenal relationship with our courts and have seen many, many successes. So as I said, today we have Mr. Eric Flinton and Sergeant Mark Schwartz. We're going to tell more about what this program is all about and Mr. Flinton's story. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief, for this opportunity, and Commission. Thank you very much. My name is Mark Schwartz. I'm a sergeant. I've been a sergeant of the Calgary Police Service for a lot of years. Currently assigned to the diversion team, which is part of the Restorative Justice Unit. Within the diversion team, I have. I was kind of hoping my presentation would be up, but it's not. We'll wing it. That's all good. I have the Drug Treatment Court. I have Calgary Indigenous Court, and I have Youth Diversion. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Awesome. Thank you very much. The Calgary Drug Treatment Court is part of the diversion team, the Restorative Justice Unit. The Restorative Justice Unit is part of the Community Services section and Strategic Partnership Planning Division under the Bureau of Community Support. Within this team, we have 3 specific diversion responsibilities. Each have their separate community partnership groups. And today I'm here to talk to you very proudly about my role, Calgary Police Service role within the Calgary Drug Treatment Court, or what we call CDTC. CPS is a proud member and proud to be a member of that team since the inception of Drug Treatment Court, which is more than 15 years ago. CDTC is a post-charge diversion program with partnership. The participants of the Drug Treatment Court all suffer from drug addiction, and their crimes that bring them to this specialized court are all motivated by that addiction. People applying for Drug Treatment Court are facing custodial sentences of between 9 months and up to 5 years plus in custody. So pretty significant. CPS's role within CDTC has been adopted by other courts and other cities that have recently started up within Alberta, including Lethbridge, Medicine Hat. We've played a significant role in Calgary with that provincial expansion, with a lot of our activities and processes being duplicated in other cities. It was my intention today to tell you Eric's story originally as part of this presentation, but the suggestion was made that I bring Eric to tell you his own story. And I thought it was a great idea. So I'm going to introduce you, Eric. Eric is a drug treatment court participant, then graduate, now is serving his 1-year probational sentence as a reward for his immense participation and success within drug treatment court. And he is a huge advocate for the program. Come on up, Eric.
Good day. I was told to be myself, so I want to send my condolences to fellow officers that have lost their lives. I'm with Matt Canada 100%. At one time, I had no respect for the law, but as someone that's been changed, you guys go through a lot. Your job's not easy, and I wouldn't want it because you're brave. So it's an honor to be here, and congratulations to you guys. You have a hard job, and I thank you. So from someone that's turned around, I really am happy that we have officers out there risking their lives to make our lives better. And I have respect for all of you. So I'm here to tell my story. Well, my whole story? Oh, okay, I'll just do a brief summary. So 3 years old, I was pulled out of my home by child services on rumors that my parents were sexually assaulting me. From there on, from 3 until 18, I have been in group homes, foster homes. I have been all over the country. I was out at a place called the Stampede Boys Ranch, which no longer actually exists. Good place. I've been in and out of special schools, jail, drugs, gang life, not so much, but I've been around the block. I finally hit my bottom when I got into meth and needles, and I racked up a bunch of charges. Went to jail. I had Ivan Ellie as a lawyer, good man, helped change my life too, who presented drug court to me. When I said, well, does it get me out of jail? He goes, well, if you're approved, right on, yes. Get out, go screw my life up again. And as an addict, that's what we do. The only time we're actually dead serious and repent for ourselves, and I will speak for a lot of my past as well as people that were criminals like me, is when we're in that holding cell downtown, begging God that we are sorry and that the JP lets us out so we can go screw up again. But I got into drug court and COVID hit. My intention for drug court was to get out and just go on the run again. Somewhere in the time for the 7-8 months I was in jail, I thought about what it could do with myself and what drug court would do for me. So I gave it a shot. I have been clean 996 days. I have my daughter back in my life. I now have friends. I am honored to have Mr. Schwartz as my friend, one of my best friends, actually, because without the police service, I wouldn't be here right now. So if cops didn't care about guys like me, I wouldn't be speaking in a room full of higher ups like you, which I'm very honored for. Thank you. And a little nervous. Drug court has changed my way of thinking, has changed my way of life. I don't need drugs to deal with pain. They have taught me through their 12-step program, which drug court has on its own, plus the Calgary Dream Centers, that forgiveness, myself, was a big thing. Can't forgive others if you can't forgive yourself. And I forgave myself, and I decided that I deserved a chance, the chance that you all gave me, and that I was going to put it to good use. Hence, here I am. The program, I'd be nothing without it. My daughter wouldn't be in my life. I'd probably be dead. Definitely be dead. I guarantee it. I now work full time. Times where a person would, I'm not proud of this either, a person would walk into a store and leave their car running, I would take it. I wouldn't even steal a 5-cent candy now. I have built honor, integrity. Accountability, faith. My faith is big in my recovery. My meetings, connection's a big one. And it's just not with myself, it's with everybody. I have to reach, you have to be connected. And because of this, I am where I am today. I have my mother back in my life. The last time I saw her, I ripped her off big time. My sister is the only regret I have. It's a hard subject. I was in recovery and she died. So I didn't get to make an amends on that one. So but I know she'd be proud of me. That's my only regret. A little too late on that one. But I do have my mom. I now have my dad back in my life. He's proud of me. My grandpa's 90. He's in a retirement, like in a home now. I went to go visit him the other day, tried to make amends with him. He just ignored me. Now I don't know if it's just because he's too old and set in his ways, or if he's just, but that's okay. I respect him no matter what. At least I got to see him. So Peter Sheraton also was my not counselor. He was my trying to find case manager, but one of my best friends. I loved how he put it to me. My attitude was one thing, but the way he put it to me, he would stomp it out. He was amazing. He's an amazing man. And we argued lots of times, but he taught me a new way of living. Along with everyone else in drug court, this program I would recommend to anyone. If they are willing to take it, they will know a better way of living, not just for themselves, but for society. Mindfulness is a big part of this treatment course. You have to think about others and not just yourself. And as an addict, or was an addict, now I'm recovering, all I thought about was myself. And use the drugs to bury the pain, just to get by every day. But drug court helped me face all this. It was hard, very hard. I wanted to quit so many times, and they just wouldn't give up on me. And that's what I needed. So now I'm here, productive, part of society, a good member, volunteer. I'm willing to do what I have to. I have respect for myself, respect for the law, respect for drug court. And yeah, I had a big anger issue. They helped me deal with it. Numerous anger management courses. Get mad over the stupidest stuff, but things that are out of my control, thanks to drug court taught me, are out of your control. Can't sweat the little stuff. New way of thinking, new pathways. We have to find new ways to think. As an addict, that's impossible. Well, I'm just going to go hit the pipe. I don't have to deal with this situation now. I face it head on, whether it means I cry through it, get mad through it, just as long as I don't keep it bottled up, but I'm going to get through it. And that's what Calgary Drug Court has taught me. It's the best program ever. I would not be the man I am today without drug court, without Mr. Swartz, and without everybody here. This program, I do recommend everybody. I've told all my friends about it, and I hope they take it, because telling you, sitting in a jail cell doesn't help. Spent a lot of my life in a cell. I wish I knew about drug court before, but I don't think it would have helped because I wasn't ready. So the only sober time I had was in a cell. And that's what I thought being sober was all about. Going to jail, workout, free meals. Hey, this is great. Well, no, I would not want to go back to that. But yeah, thank you for making me the man I am today. That's pretty much it. All your decisions, all your help. Like I said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for any of you. And for giving a damn about people like me. And I'm just glad I can actually be sober enough to see that you care about me. That's being mindful. And that's definitely what you guys deserve.
Great job.
So thank you.
Over 900 days sober. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm honored that you called me a friend. That's meaningful. So that's a hard act to follow. So getting back to my presentation. CPS plays three key roles within drug treatment court, and on a larger team, that team consists of provincial court judges, case managers, probation officers, crown prosecutors, and defense lawyers. CPS provides a very detailed suitability assessment for each person that applies. These assessments measure the applicant's suitability of the program, their likelihood of success, concerns for treatment, safety, and potential public safety risks. And I'll be honest with you, I personally wrote Eric's assessment, and it was a tough one to get through, and we took a bit of a chance on him at that time. And I'm glad we did. CPS monitors all participants within the program once they've been accepted, assisting the case managers probation with the accountability portion. And the rules of the program and the conditions of their bail orders that they're put on. These monitoring continues beyond graduation and through the end of their probation after the program's participation is done. CPS is responsible for returning participants that unfortunately abscond from the program. All attempts are made to bring people back to the relapse from that relapse and continue with the program. This is done through social media, fugitive apprehension unit, Crime Stoppers, among other creative strategies. You may have seen some of my press releases in the past and trying to bring people back into the beds that we've served for them. If I can go to the next slide. Two more, sorry. Okay, there's some quick stats for you. Drug court has had a significant impact in our community, and we should be proud of it. It's a clear example of community partnership working to help drug addicted offenders and CPS's impact. Through the use of honesty and accountability, Eric's story is only one of many that could be shared and celebrated here. These participants are potentially serious criminal offenders that have had significant life change through court and police monitored sobriety and treatment. CPS is proud of this partnership, and the data revealed in this recent recidivism study that we conducted overwhelmingly supports the work that we are doing in Calgary Drug Treatment Court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation, and thank you so much for coming and sharing your story in person. I so appreciate that. It's
Thank you.
it's an honor for us as well. Thank you. And I will turn it over to commission members now for any questions there might be, comments, or whatever. So we'll start with Commissioner Siddiqui. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Sergeant Schwartz, and Eric, thank you for your story. I think, we hear about these programs, but to see a real life face behind the program and to hear it and for you to come to in public and share it, thank you so much for that. The question I had was, how does one get accepted into the program? Like, is there a certain, like in terms of the crime that you committed, is there a certain level and you can't get accepted beyond that? If you could just explain that a little bit, please.
Absolutely. It is quite complex, actually. They have to be, the applications have to come through their defense lawyer because there's a significant amount of, they have to plead guilty to all charges in front of the courts. So there's a significant amount of jeopardy that they're facing by doing that and then being put on a bail order. So for Eric to come into drug treatment court, he had to say, yes, I'm guilty to all these offenses and I'm willing to be put on this bail order. And I have to, and he had to agree to a sentence structure. So he had to agree to the sentence that was being proposed. I don't remember what it was, he might, but it would have been in the range of 1 year to 5 years in custody. And if he would have said, no, I'm not doing this anymore halfway through, then he made a contract and he's going to go do his time. So there's some significant jeopardy for him. And that's where the accountability is built in. So we don't accept people with strong gang ties. We don't accept people that have significant violence and a pattern of violence. And that's where that risk assessment and account assessment comes in. that we're doing on everybody, because there's lots of little pieces. I'm a vouching for somebody to come out of jail to go meet in person with a probation officer, with a case manager in court weekly, and go into a place like the Dream Center or Simon House, the places that support our program. And I'm taking a risk from a public safety standpoint with different offenders, saying that, you know, we're vouching for them. So we put a lot of work into that, and we don't take everybody. We definitely don't.
And just a follow-up question. Thank you for that. Out of those 87 participants, how long do you keep in contact with them once they're kind of done? So what are the touch bases, I guess, throughout the years?
So no different than Eric. He finished, he graduated from drug treatment court, and he received a gift from us as one of his graduation, but he still has to report to court for a year after. So there's a whole year of probation, and that's kind of that gift he was given by the judge instead of the in custody piece. And so every month for the first 6 months, he comes to court, and there's those checkpoints. And then the last 6 months, he does 2 check-ins if everything's going good. If it's not going good, they'll change that frequency. As far as the police staying in contact, we kind of drop off after that year, because we're happy that these people are back and being productive members of society. As far as their case managers go, there's a real bond that's built there. And a lot of those participants will just show up in court years after, just to support the program. And they'll show up or call their case managers and give updates, those kind of things. It's quite impactful, actually. I would encourage everyone, if they get a chance, to attend a drug treatment court graduation. It'll change the way you see court for sure.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Commissioner Mallon?
Thank you. Very inspiring presentation, Eric. Thank you. My question is related to resources. I remember the first court that was set up was domestic violence. And in order for that court to work, there was a significant influx of mental health dollars from the province that were kind of new dollars in order to effect the treatment, typically for perpetrators at that time. This court, is there sufficient community and addiction resources available to enable you to recommend all the people that you may? I've always got this sense that in the past, people would go to court and judges felt helpless because there wasn't a lot of resource to refer people to for treatment. So is that better now?
I'm going to be speaking from just my personal experience. And this will probably be better answered by the CEO of drug court, the actual association. There's a lot of moving parts within drug court that require pieces, and requires a commitment from our judiciary, the judges, to be able to have a specialty court judge dedicated to those things. We have seized judges, 3 of them within drug court, same with Indigenous court. And that has gotten better. That awareness around has certainly gotten better over the last few years. Just recently, recent in my time, I guess the last 3-4 years, there's been a huge influx of support from the provincial government, and that's what allowed for the opening of 5 new drug courts in Alberta, and Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, Red Deer, Fort McMurray. And I believe Grand Prairie might be coming on board pretty soon. So there are those pieces, and we used to do fundraising, and we used to support the court, but we're not in a position to do that anymore. We're funded by the provincial government. So.
Oh, well, that's hopeful then. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell?
Thanks very much. So my question is actually for you, Sergeant Swartz, but Eric, congratulations. Be well, continue to be well, and I never want to see you in this room again. And I hope that, I know that you're working full time. I'm hoping that your employer knows that you're here doing this today. And okay, perfect. Just because if there's some, you could bring the chief as evidence if there's a problem. So Sergeant Schwartz, something that Eric actually said in his presentation was around COVID and the impact of COVID in the time frame of going through drug court. And it made me recall actually a situation outside of drug court, but in my own parish where my priest actually is one of those folks who hears step fives in the 12-step program. And it was something that during the pandemic, well, that's still going on, we needed to be very conscious of being able to provide that process and space to be able to hear those step fives and continue that process for those who were working through addiction. So my question is actually, what kinds of contingencies do you have in place to deal with some of the aspects of the program, drug court, as well as some of the, I'm going to say like ancillary programs that are supported through drug court to continue to have participants get through the program when we have a situation like the pandemic?
Yeah, and no different than everybody else. We were rolling with the punches and pulling some rabbits out of our hat, but it worked. Regrettably, there was pieces that were, and I felt this myself. I feel a real connection. I get to see these people every week, right? Every Thursday I'm in court and I make a connection with these people in the hallway, and they know they can count on me, and that wasn't there anymore. The judges were fantastic. There's a courtroom called 1801. It's the one where they do, I don't know if you've ever been up there. It's massive. It's like an auditorium courtroom. We were able to use that for a good portion of COVID, and everybody sat in their own pews and yelling back and forth and trying to figure that out. The programming, as you're aware from your parish, was a lot of it was done online, and a lot of it was done around the world online, because we're not the only place that had this problem, and we were tapping into recovery programs everywhere in the world and at all times. The hard part was the accountability piece, because it became easier for those who were struggling with relapse or struggling to hide that struggle or to continue with their relapse. And it was a challenge for sure. And we really had to perk our ears up to be conscious of what our participants were doing. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Commissioner Neeson-Jordan.
Thanks so much for giving us a real life example of what you do every day. So just wanted to point that out, that I was quite thrilled to see an example. I do have two questions. One is you mentioned that the defense attorneys have to enable their client to make the application. Are we sure that all of those defense attorneys are actually offering it? And the second part of that is, the numbers, when I was reading through the documents, seem relatively low, and yet you have amazing results. So if we doubled the program, would we have the same type of return on investment, so to speak? So how are we dealing with increasing the numbers to try and get at that return on investment? Thanks.
So I'll answer your first question, no. There are some defense lawyers here in Calgary. We've done lots, and when I say we, not me, it's more about around the CEO and the actual Drug Treatment Court Society. They're doing that hard work with the defense bar to educate, and it's an ongoing thing to really advocate for what this program can do. There are defense lawyers that aren't on board with the program and not advocating for it. There are some that are fantastic, like with anything else. And we have some really good customers that are great defense lawyers here in Calgary that refer a lot of their clients, and it's great. We do have a capacity based on funding. We're not at capacity right now. We'd love to be. And we do a lot of things, both within the Calgary Police Service, within probation, all those things, to raise the awareness so that we can. I've went out and met with all our drug teams. It's my intention to meet with all our DOT teams in the coming year, and our auto theft team. They're on my list. Recently, I've had posters put up at APS around drug court. They're also up at remand. And our CEO, our Liliska is her name, fantastic lady, really educated, well done. She has actually had some cards made up that look like a movie ticket. and it has the QR code scan on it. And those are given to the people that potentially the potential next Eric, and they at arrest time or a jail and those kind of things. So it might not hit home at that moment, but no different than he expressed. You have to kind of hit a place where you're ready, right?
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone online? I can't see who's online. Are there any hands up online? Nope. Okay. So if I can, I think it's a redundant question, but it's just in summary that you say you're not at capacity, but it sounds like there's a number of different pieces to be put in place to get to capacity. It's the defense lawyers. Is there an element of funding that's involved? Access to various treatment facilities? So are those all of the factors that are in the way of getting to capacity?
Yeah, again, a lot of it hinges on the applications coming in, and we're doing everything I believe we can to bring the applications forward from the Calgary Police Services standpoint. I know probation's doing the same thing, doing presentations to the other probation officers and things like that to try and drum up the business or find those people that are ready to go. And but it does hinge on the pieces around you need that defense lawyer on board, because it's a post-charge. There is some consequence for pleading guilty to something if you're not ready to go, right?
Great. Thank you so much. The very, any other questions, comments? No? So I will just say thank you again. Eric, please go
I
ahead.
just want to mention, I might be able to help with this aspect. I've only been a member of society for 3 years. Before that, I was 20 years old. A big part in it, it's not so much you guys and not putting in more effort or anything or enough effort. It's the fact that we just didn't care. As a criminal or as an addict, we don't want to be told what to do. It's a hard program. I don't have as much trouble because I know from my own personal experience, it's good to be told what to do. It's what I needed, and that's where I am now. But a lot of what I used to be, what they are now, is the attitude. I know guys that went into the program that dropped out and said, forget this, because they just didn't want to be told what to do. Their ego, their attitude, they just ignorant. That's a lot of it has to do with that. And then it's just people are so ignorant in jail, and I was one of them, so I can tell you that honestly, and that's why. Even if they are ready, they just don't want to be told what to do. They're so used to being criminals that they do what they want. Getting arrested is one thing, they don't care because they got to sell 3 meals, and that's just my personal. I figure it might help. So, thanks.
Thank you. It's very helpful because it's like many things. It's not just one thing. You've got to be ready, and you've got to have the right request, and then the supports and such in place. So it's all of those pieces coming together. So great. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your work and your hard work, and much appreciated. So with that, I think we'll conclude that item on the agenda, and we can move on to the next 2 reports. There's an update from the Bureau of Investigative Support, Community Policing, and then we'll get to the anti-racism update. So
thank you, Chair. Thank you again, Mark, and thank you, Eric, for taking the time. Appreciate it. Awesome. And I'll turn it over then to Deputy Chief Cook there. We'll start out with the crime update for the Bureau of Investigative Support. And I think we'll run these 2, I think was the deal, and then ask questions after the 2. Was that? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair. As in previous meetings, there was a written report submitted. I'll do my best to try to highlight some of the key issues from the month. I'll start with shooting and gun violence, which is top of mind and remains a top priority for the chief and our service across all 4 bureaus. As of November 14th, there were 122 shootings. As of yesterday, there was 1 more shooting, so we're at 123. But as the report indicates, that's a 42% increase from the same time period last year. But as I can tell you, with our enforcement efforts and suppression efforts and the prioritization of violent offenders, our efforts have driven that down to 35. And as we reported at the start of the first quarter of the year into the second quarter, that statistic was significantly higher. So I remain optimistic that the efforts from across the service that are occurring daily and nightly are starting to drive that trend down. In October, we recorded 12 shootings, which was an increase from the previous month in September. And when compared to October 2021, this represents a 9% increase over October 5-year average. But as I said, we've had 4 shootings in the month of November. So we continue to drive that down. And I can tell you it's without question some of the prioritized enforcement and securing offenders back in custody, to be quite frank with you. They're back in jail. To date this year, 22 shootings include 5 fatal shootings, and 5 of those are believed to be connected to organized crime. And once I get into homicides, you'll see that, as we've discussed before, our organized crime shootings and homicides are historically hard to solve because of the nature of the crime business and the reluctance on victims and witnesses to come forward to support those investigations. We have seized a total of 435 crime guns for the year compared to a year-end total of 550. But I can't stress enough, our investigative efforts and intelligence in and around crime guns is increasing exponentially year over year, and could not be achieved without the support of the Commission and Council, with some of the growth positions in 2022, where we constituted our firearms investigative team. And with the growth over the next 4-year cycle, some of those positions are assigned to our support team in support of the investigative team in and around harvesting the intelligence from our crime guns. As of November 14th, there were 24 homicides in Calgary, and to date, there's no change in those 24. Our last was in November. We had 2 back in October, and as you recall, we hadn't had a homicide since August. But again, there is no predictable trend to homicides. We continue to see domestic violence. We continue to see war crime and just deadly confrontations that are happening within our city. Our homicide clearance rate remains higher than during the same period last year. So far in 2022, we've laid charges in 18 homicides, representing a 75% clearance rate, which is a high clearance rate. And as we've discussed before, historical homicides, even back to the early 80s and 90s. So that clearance rate, as time goes on, continues to go up. But for this year, we have 5 unsolved that are still active investigations. And as I indicated earlier, 3 of those 5 are related to organized crime, and they are challenging files to solve. 13 homicides, so approximately 54%, have included the use of firearms, with 5 of these being connected to organized crime. Shooting-related homicides, in particular those with organized crime connections, again, to state what I said, are notoriously hard to solve because of all of the reasons I indicated earlier. This month, our missing persons team was able to bring closure to a family of a deceased person, missing person, through the use of advanced DNA analysis. The individual had been reported missing to police in 2021, and through an exhaustive investigation, detectives identified similarities between the missing person and unidentified remains that had been located a year prior in 2020 on the Bow River. Through further investigative work, additional DNA samples were collected and confirmed to provide answers to the missing person's family. The results would not have been possible without access to advanced DNA technologies. For obvious reasons for closure to the family, the use of advanced technologies is paramount to us furthering investigation and bringing closure to families. And the reason why I highlight this, and enclosed, I will provide more details just around the respect for the privacy and confidentiality of the family. But I think it's important when the chief and we come forward with investments in capital where we're trying to advance our efforts within DNA. I think it's important to have the commission as advocates to understand, because we certainly appreciate there's 2 sides to the DNA conversation in and around civil rights, but also the importance towards investigation and furthering investigations and bringing closures to family. And we'll continue to work with the commission through that process. Last budget cycle, we made capital investments within our Rapid DNA, and with this 4-year cycle with our growth, We have dedicated resources now that we can assign to that technology to support investigations across the service. As we heard from Eric, not all of our efforts are in relation to enforcement with offenders of crime. Our prolific offender engagement team is currently monitoring 109 offenders who have been identified as committing 5.9 times as many crimes as the average offender in Calgary. Our prolific offender engagement team are embedded into Chad's district, and they work hand in hand with the teams that are out every night and every day. As part of their duties, POAT officers work to engage offenders to prevent recidivism by building relationships, connecting offenders dealing with addictions to support, and when necessary, through the use of suppression and enforcement. Suppression and enforcement is not always our go-to tactic, because as I said before, I think we want to prevent the crime before it ever occurs. POAT has been successful in assisting an offender take steps to turn his life around after accumulating more than 82 convictions as both a youth and as an adult. In November 2019, the offender was assigned to POAT for monitoring, where officers worked to build rapport with him, as we heard, similar to Mark and Eric's relationship. Since working with POAT, the offender has taken responsibility for his crimes, attending counseling, developed relationships with his family, landed full-time employment, and remained sober and crime-free. The offender credits the work of POAT officers in his success. Back in October, our service hosted the Alberta Justice and Solicitor General Family Violence Conference in October, which resulted in 69 CPS members participating in the training, and also partners with the RCMP and community partners. And with that, those are the highlights that I wanted to capture within the written report that was provided. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Tofik.
Thanks, Paul. And so just to expand on that, as far as some other crime categories, and I know the report got into the different categories and how they trended in the month of October, but also year to date. We are seeing a trend of violence remaining neutral in October, which we're watching very closely. One of the key findings from the patterns over the last 2 years in relation to violent incidents has been a high correlation with temperature and the amount of economic activity going on. So with fewer public health order restrictions, we're seeing more activity, and we're just noticing that with the trend to continue. At the offense level, common assault and commercial robbery accounted for 36% of the incidents of violence. The 5-year average for break and enters in October was 805. There were 554 in October, which is down 31% from average and down 9% from October of 2021. So that's a positive. Of note, the residential break and enter activity dropped considerably in October, and commercial as well was down. So we're watching that trend continue to normalize the numbers for the year to date, because we did have a spike earlier in the year. There were 1,181 incidents of vehicle crime recorded in October. That's a significant decrease of 31% from the 5-year average, about 500 fewer incidents. Compared against the same month last year, that's 132 fewer incidents. So even compared to last year, year to date, vehicle crime is currently 2% below the 5-year average and is down 24% from 2021. Theft of vehicles in particular was 10% lower than the 5-year average. So we're seeing a trend a bit more back to normal, what we saw pre-pandemic, but we're monitoring it closely. On the disorder front, it was notably that the 5-year average, we were below that, 382 fewer calls. Similar to last month, that volume remains slightly below, but we're watching the trend around that. Suspicious persons and suspicious vehicles saw the largest declines. What we're seeing as far as the calls driving it were disturbances and those types of occurrences that cause public disorder. I included in the report itself a number of district-led operations that highlight the work going around drug enforcement, and which often includes firearms enforcement, numerous drugs seized in the tune of 200,000 worth of drugs in one operation, multiple charges against 3 individuals, and 2 loaded handguns recovered in that one, and a District 6 operation as well that highlighted public safety impacts at the community level and the appreciation shown by community when we intervened on that. So it's a positive. On the LRT safety front, in conjunction with the ongoing partnership with Calgary Transit, the CPS has worked operational plans on a regular basis. There was one cited in October. We had another one in November going with them to address crime and social disorder on the transit system. This operation, the one in October that was cited in the report, involved both members of Calgary Transit Protective Services and our members, both in uniformed and plainclothes capacity, with positive results as far as addressing issues of public safety. 171 warrants executed, 140 summonses issued, 45 people arrested with 47 criminal charges laid, mostly for drug trafficking and concealed weapons, and 110 warnings issued. Out of those, it's important to note that following our operation, there was feedback that the word was getting around that our members were seeing what was happening and that they were aware that we had plainclothes members working it, which I think is a positive thing that I'd like that word to spread around. We will be out there enforcing in all capacities. On the traffic safety front, and there's a typo in the report, it should say in October, the fatal collision count increased to 17, continues to surpass 2021 by an increase of 5 collisions, but remains below 2020 numbers. In that, collisions involving alcohol and drugs are on par for prior years, an average of 6 per year we typically see that involve alcohol or drugs. In the month of October, over a 10-day period, traffic section investigated 3 hit-and-run collisions involving pedestrians, including a fatal incident at 17th Ave and 44th Street Southeast. So we saw a number of hit-and-run collisions that were concerning for us and for our members who have to investigate that. Overall, we're watching the collision front, and it is trending a bit of an uptick as compared to previous pandemic years. And we will be following through with other enforcement and prevention initiatives accordingly. With respect to the traffic service requests, we continue to receive those. 96% of them are dealt with by our traffic section, the rest by the districts, and all of them get addressed on a timely basis. You'll notice in the report itself 2 prevention initiatives by traffic. One that was CPS partnering with For Driving Skills for Life to deliver safety presentations to youth. About 350 young drivers were presented with some good education around impaired driving prevention, some firsthand experience around with the goggles to see what that truly looks like, hopefully to give them a sense of perspective on that. As well, the CPS and the Youth Foundation partnered in a hashtag Drive Safe YYC initiative, 3 videos developed targeting 3 specific aspects: speeding, distracted driving, and impaired driving. These were made specifically and branded to be targeted toward our youth in that they are not preachy, they are more educational and to spark conversation and to promote positive behavior as opposed to dwelling always on the negative. So we're going to be using those in schools, but have shared them also provincially with our partner agencies to use as a stepping stone for that conversation around traffic safety. Moving into December, we are ramping up the Check Stop program, so you'll expect to see that and more coming out on social media on that. So I'll leave it there.
Chair, did we want to take questions on these 2 now? Or okay.
So questions, comments on these 2 reports. So I'll start from the other end of the table this time. Commissioner Campbell, I think. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. 2 questions. Deputy Chief Cook, looking at some of the comments you made with respect to homicides, it really triggered me, not triggered, but clued me into to ask a question with respect to missing persons cases. And because you did indicate that there was some resolution of some longstanding issues and being able to speak to families and give them some closure. So could you, I know that we put in place in another report that's not necessarily part of the public agenda, but dedicated resources to provide critical attention to missing persons investigations, particularly including cases involving missing Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit persons. Could you speak a little bit to that without thank you.
I can, and thank you for the question, because I think it's a very important conversation, not only in Calgary, but nationally. And the commitments, not only for law enforcement, but community. And we have numerous reports that guide whether it's calls to action, truth and reconciliation, missing and missed with marginalized community in Toronto. And quite honestly, I'm immensely proud of the work that our missing person team has done in Calgary, and a presentation that I believe was back in October that was led by Superintendent Ryan Ailiff, where some of our investments, Commissioner, have been no greater than within our missing person. So whether it's a genetic genealogist who's on staff with the Calgary Police Service that are assisting with missing and missed, Ryan has led a review of our data back all the way to 1976. We have some outstanding files related to missing Indigenous women, murdered women, I should say. One, there was an individual charge, but through appeal, was overturned. So those are still classified as not being resolved or cleared. That was Fox and Ear. It was a quadruple homicide. So our efforts will not stop in pursuing the truth. Crazy Bull back in the early 90s. So we're aware of all of our files, Commissioner, and I can tell you we're active on all of them. Specifically, some of the work that we've heard that Deputy McClellan has led in around our sacred space, the growth that we got through Commission and Council for a dedicated resource liaison officer embedded within our missing persons team that you would have heard from Deputy Ailiff speak about, and the importance about engaging the community and elders to describe to us the importance of that position and what that position can be. So not so much us dictating that mandate, more importantly for the community to inform it. So I hope that answered your question. I can tell you it's top of mind. It's a top priority, because as I get into probably in camera where I'll talk about the one, it's about the sanctity and dignity of life, and all life matters, and closures to family matters. And that's the work that our homicide and our missing persons team do. And even in our patrol with Chad's folks, I can tell you the relationships and bringing truth and justice to families in this city or across Canada is a top priority for us at the Calgary Police Service.
Thanks very much, Deputy Chief Cook. My second question and my last one is for Chief Neufeld, although I'm not sure I can really ask it with you looking like an extra from Chips. But such a good show. So the one item I didn't see in the crime update is related to what I'm going to say are the special investigations that CPS has been asked to recently undertake. Considering the level of trust and transparency that CPS is trying to maintain with Calgarians, and much discussion about perceived conflict of interest, has CPS considered outsourcing these investigations as a measure of diligence and care for the independence of CPS, perhaps to, I'm going to suggest, Sûreté de Québec?
So first, I just want to say you're reaching a long way back for that reference to Chips, but that's appreciated nevertheless. But I'm not sure if I understand which particular cases you're talking about. I will say this though, that's always a consideration if we think that there may be a conflict of interest, either real or perceived. We'll certainly look at the issue of outsourcing. I can tell you we've been challenged on a couple of those occasions where we have outsourced files and they've taken an inordinate amount of time. So a couple times we've actually really balanced, do we take that approach, or how much of a perceived conflict might this be? And is there another way to mitigate it, such as a review by an external police agency or something like that? So I get your point, and you may have a further one to make about which specific files you're talking about, but nevertheless, we always consider that if there's a file. So please, if there's any more you wish to add.
No, I appreciate the concern for the length of investigation, because that's absolutely something that we've been struggling with right here at Calgary Police Commission. So I'll be quite transparent. So I didn't want to get into the the meat, but in detail, the investigations I'm thinking of, and the ones that I contemplated were, the investigation of the failed Operation Peacock. There is alleged involvement of Councillor Chu and alleged involvement of former Councillor Madley-Coca. Of course, Councillor Chu was a sworn member of CPS for 21 years. Former Councillor Madley-Coca is being investigated on unrelated matters by our CMP. In the investigation for the photographing of and publication of Mayor Gondek's vehicle license plates by Councillor Chu. Again, Councillor Chu was a sworn member of CPS for 21 years. And then considering that the case, the Calgary Police Commission's review is of situation with the internal handling of criminal allegations that were made in 1997, again, against then police officer Chu.
Commissioner Campbell, I'm wondering if there's a particular, like a high level question you can ask, otherwise.
It's more, he just wanted to get the sense of what I was thinking about.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where I was going.
Okay, thanks.
That's what I was contemplating in terms of, it might be in terms of that diligence and care.
Yeah. Anything additional to add, or is that still the same response you had?
I would say just at a high level, we do consider that in every case. I think in some of the ones that you referred to were actually referred externally, and I think there was charges laid in some of those. Some are still outstanding, but we will always consider that. Some we haven't received complaints on. So that's an issue as well. But certainly every time we do have a complaint where we have an individual, a high profile sort of individual involved, we will consider the most appropriate way to deal with it. So you have that commitment at the very least.
Thank you. There are two questions online, so I'm going to go to those next. Commissioner Lynch Proctor, can you please go ahead?
Hi, Chair. Can you hear me? I'm getting an error message on the video saying that I'm not able to start it.
We can hear you very well and see your name. We can't see your face, but that's okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry for that, and we'll just go with that. Sorry I can't be there in person today, but I think it's for all of your benefit. I think I have two questions for Deputy Chief Cook. The first is related to the offender management program. You've talked to us in the past about the impact of, I guess, an evolving catch and release justice system. I believe that were the words that you used, and the impact it's having on violent crimes and police resources. And my question is just whether anything's changed in this regard, in particular, since COVID restrictions have lifted and presumably strain on containment is potentially eased. But I just wondered if you could give us an update on that.
I would say from my experience and the work that my folks lead specific to repeat offenders, I would say not much has changed. I think, though, in fairness, like law enforcement in our response to offenders, we're a part of that whole justice system. And we certainly have to do our work in and around bail hearings and justifications for incarceration. And so I think we play a part, but specifically, I don't think anything has changed. No. We're dealing with the same offenders over and over again.
Okay, thank you for that. My second question is around your update on domestic violence. And there is a reference in your report to 60% of all identified risk factors being violent or predatory behavior. So wondered now that I think just over a year has passed since Clare's Law and the registry have come into effect, and wondering if that's having any impact, what sort of uptick you're seeing by the community in terms of accessing and that registry and engaging with the police.
That is an outstanding question, and I wish I had the stats at my fingertips. But I can tell you, specific to Clare's Law, the access, duty to know, duty to report, I can tell you that position is probably at capacity. We continue to monitor. It was a position that we had to take out of our domestic violence team to ensure that we were providing the service and the reporting back to the government. But again, as this commission knows, part of the growth in the next 4-year cycle confirms that position within our domestic violence team. As far as our stats go, there has been, as we've reported to commission, the incidence of domestic violence is down, but domestic reporting is up. Our risk assessors are doing thousands of assessments and with thousands of offenders. But again, it's not necessarily the violence, but as everything we talked about before, we're trying to get to a point of preventing the violence from happening. So we're very encouraged by the amount of reporting that's coming in, the amount of risk assessment that can be done, the amount of intervention that can take place to make sure that violence isn't occurring.
Thanks, Deputy Cook. I really appreciate those answers.
Thank you very much. Commissioner French.
Thank you, Chair. And I too am having the same challenges with video, but I have, I guess, a comment and then a question. So first, the comment is just thank you both for your updates. I found those, very compelling, and I want to say thank you for your continued efforts in these areas. I know, as you described, there's a lot to be done in some of these with some of these metrics. But I can hear and appreciate the passion in your presentation and in your voice, and things like the timely closing of those homicide cases and files are a testament to the passion and activity you bring to the job. So thank you to you and your teams for staying on top of that. Second, it's related to one of the last questions. It's just, I'm curious if we know what percentage of violent crimes are perpetrated by repeat or known or prolific offenders. And then, given some of the success that I think was described around the POET program, is there an opportunity to look at increasing resources in that regard, or is it tapped out? I'm just kind of curious about in terms of how much capacity there is within that program. So if I could ask that question, please.
Specific to your question about the repeat offenders in relation to violence, that is something I could take away. But again, in my experience in law enforcement, I would suggest it's high. But as far as that probably doesn't answer your question adequately, but it is something I could certainly take away with our analytical teams to try to get a definitive answer on that. But anecdotally, I'm going to speculate that it's high. As far as the other question around capacity around our offender management unit, I would say our dedicated offender management teams are like at capacity or well beyond capacity. But I can tell you offender management is something that all members of our service are engaged in, from frontline patrol officers right through to our high risk offender program or our prolific offender programs. But as far as capacity, our efforts in and around offenders, we have more offenders than we can deal with, and we use intelligence and our information systems to prioritize the ones that we believe pose the most harm to this community. And those are the ones that through enforcement and suppression, we are actively targeting. And that is a process that occurs within our service at a weekly meeting across bureaus, because quite honestly, we can't cover all our markers. So we're identifying those that pose the most harm to this community, and we are actively engaged in our suppression and enforcement efforts. And as I alluded to earlier, late last week, two of the top, like, we are doing everything we can to protect this community and reduce the gun violence.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your answer. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to just jump in a quick question, just because it was part of my question. So making progress, and I'm just curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on your process. You know, how do you define prolific? And if you're making progress and it seems like you've solved a few and gotten a few out of the system, more obviously come back in. Is the trend going up or down? What caused it to fluctuate? And so that's one piece. And the other part is, it sounds like it's sort of a triage to figure out amongst your teams and your officers, you know, who is going to deal with which one, depending on who's got the closest ties or how much or so. Anyhow, if you can sort of elaborate a little bit on that, please.
Yeah, in general terms, I can tell you, like the chief has made it very clear, one of our top external priorities is reducing gun violence in the community. So whether it's Deputy McClellan's Bureau or Deputy Gills or Deputy Toffic, I can tell you we are connected throughout our efforts. As far as specific offenders, there are harm scores where our analysts and our intelligence officers and our investigators get together. Because again, as we've expressed to this commission, we have finite resources and we have certain techniques and resources that we can deploy, whether it's surveillance, whether it's directed patrol, that we need to be coordinated. So with the amount of offenders we have, we can't cover all of them. So that it's a series of prioritizations based upon ever-changing information and intelligence. And our teams, through Jody Gash, who is presented, has to be reactive and responsive to that ever-changing environment. But what I can tell you, though, is they're prioritized. And through that prioritization, through my resources, Chad's resources, we do our absolute best every day to make sure we're covering the right people. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt that you're doing your best. Absolutely. I was more curious about the process and how it's managed, because it seems from this side of the desk totally overwhelming. So thank you for all of the work and effort. So I'll move on to Commissioner Nice-Jordan.
Thanks. Two very different questions. I think one relates to some of the statistics that were in the report. So you break out the gang violence portion of those shootings. Do you have a sense of how many, and this may be my ignorance of the system being new to this kind of dealing with the data that's coming out, is which or what's the percentage of those firearms that are not that are illegally acquired for those shootings, and how many of them are actually legally acquired that you may be able to do something about on a different level than you would for those that are illegally acquired elsewhere?
I think I understand your question. So if I'm off, Mark, just set me straight again. We've done in the last 2 years, when we constituted our firearms investigative team and with our ballistic lab, I would say provincially and nationally, we're probably, as an agency, we probably have as much data as any other agency in relation to our crime guns. All of the crime guns are illegally possessed or stored. So the vast majority of our crime guns originate through lawful ownership, but they're acquired criminally through like break-in enters, for example. We can tell you how many we know of being imported and exported or smuggled, but the vast majority are still locally sourced through crime. Okay. But obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, to answer your question, when we come across them at a scene, they're typically modified with the barrel. They're typically, the serial numbers have been obliterated, and it's our firearms investigative team that do as much as they can to harvest the intelligence off of that crime gun to tie back to original ownership to see if there's intelligence or information that we can use to support the investigation that we're actively pursuing. So for example, at a shooting scene, if there's a gun, we do everything we can to harvest intelligence off of that. We would test fire it. We would obviously have a certificate to prove that it actually is a weapon if we get to a prosecution. But we're also going back within our data to see if that firearm is being used at any other crime.
And just as a follow-up, I would assume then at a gun at a scene that there is some track back to that person who legally acquired it and that it was properly stored, properly dealt with, and it was obtained illegally from that break-in, for example.
Absolutely. And every crime gun, we try to get all the way back to point of origin, if and when we can.
So my second question is totally unrelated to this. It has to do with the pharmacy program or the pharmacy break-ins. So one of the things that was highlighted is that they're using a lot of third-party individuals to do that. Is there kind of an understanding of who those third-party individuals are? Are they teens? Is there some way to get at that particular aspect of those pharmacy break-ins?
Again, great question. You obviously read the report, so thank you. There was again, through cooperation with Deputy Tofik, there has been a significant amount of resources put into our pharmacy robberies. It was one of the biggest crime trends that we've experienced throughout this year. There's been a lot of prevention through the Association of Pharmacists with the time delayed safes. It's one of those things, we don't know what we don't know, but what I can tell you, what we do know, as a result of very aggressive investigations, because those robberies were extremely violent, and we had shared videos of those robberies. The majority of the offenders that we have arrested and charged are youth. It was late, I would say September-ish, October-ish, we started to, again, harvest intelligence and information that they're probably being directed by other individuals that may not be youth. But again, it's still there's a bit of a blind spot there as to the motivation, other than we knew that they were trying to acquire narcotics. So hopefully that answers your question. The vast majority of the offenders to date are youth.
Figured so.
Thank you.
Maybe just to add quickly, we did notice a trend though around particular communities that were involved. And so there has been, through Deputy McClellan's bureau, there has been engagement with that community from a prevention perspective to say this is going on and we need to make sure that we're connected and that adults and elders and people who can be aware can be aware of the trending as well, because I think they can help that a lot. Because I think, to Paul's point, very violent and also very sophisticated for the age of the individuals who were involved. And that's why that sort of connects with the fact that there may have been some direction given from people who sort of knew more or had been involved, who were adults. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
And Commissioner Mallon, do you still have a question? No, it's been answered. Okay, good. Sorry. Last of the line. Great. So thank you for those two reports. And again, amazing work and so appreciated. And it's very helpful for us to learn a little bit more each time. So thank you again.
And Chair, if I could just, as new commissioners come on board, with the new firearms investigative team, I know there'll be a year-end report, as there was last year, that was shared with the commission. We've made significant investments into that team and into that unit. So I would be happy we will be sharing that report. I think it's publicly posted, our last one, because there's lots of interest around where these guns being sourced, and it's important to us. I don't think it'll be ready necessarily right in January, but certainly within the first quarter, we'll have a report in around our crime guns.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the last report in the public session on anti-racism action update.
For this one, I'll turn it over to Deputy McClellan, as you know, and I think similar to Commissioner Lynch Proctor, I think her absence today is probably in all of our best interests. So Katie, I'll turn it over to you for the report. Thank you.
Not sure how to take that. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Chair. Most you will have seen the report that I have submitted. I'll just give a couple of very, very quick highlights. You will see that we continue to engage with many community members, attend many events. We're continuing with our e-training. You will have seen, sadly, that we did lose a member from our ARAC committee, Dr. Darren Lund, who passed away, and Inspector Martin attended his celebration of life just recently. We are looking to fill a few vacancies on our ARAC team, so stay posted for that. We'll probably be looking at putting some new information out early on in the new year. And we continue to have many conversations with our members. Just this past week, the other deputies and I attended 2 of my town halls, and one of the topics of conversation was around anti-racism, and we had some great conversations And recently we just had another workshop, ELT, SLT. So I am happy to take any questions, and those are my updates. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Mallon.
Thank you. Deputy Chief, Katie, your last name evaded me for a second there. McClellan. I was just interested if there was any update on your community mobilization program that was referenced in the anti-racism committee, as that would be, I think, a significant part of the anti-racism agenda.
Thanks very much, Commissioner, for the question. And so, yes, we have worked with some of our community partners to put together what that job description looks like. We've been working with HR, and we were just about to post those positions. And then just with respect to the timing, with our budget being approved, that those positions have now been approved. So we will be posting, I'm hoping, by the end of the year, and that they will be in place by the end of January. So we're moving along with them, and I can tell you that many folks on the advisory board have reached out to us, and we've got lots and lots of interest. So we're excited about moving that initiative forward here in the next few weeks with respect to the posting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Campbell and then Commissioner Siddiqui.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just to compliment Deputy Chief McClellan, partway through your report, you spoke and wrote about honoring our nation-to-nation treaty partners, and that the recruit classes were inspected by an Indigenous elder, Blackfoot elder, who was also a military veteran. And my only note in the margins of the report are massive, period, applause, period. So I just articulate that to you.
So much, Commissioner. We're very, very fortunate to have such a great relationship, and it's an incredible initiative as well. Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui.
Thanks, Chair. Deputy Chief, you mentioned that you're recruiting for your AROC team. Are there specific communities that you're looking to recruit from at this point?
Sorry, some technological issues on this end. So great question. We've been actually looking at the list of Calgarians that applied the last go around, although we do get that it's a bit dated. So we're still in the process to look to see if we should in fact just reopen the whole entire competition, or look at some of the folks that were interested and weren't successful the last time. So with respect to specific communities, we're looking for diversity from all of our communities. And so without giving, looking for certain specific communities, we're just putting out the competition and recognizing that we do need to have as many of our communities represented at the table.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from online? No. Okay. And seeing no further questions in the room, I will say thank you for all of the reports and the information today. There's, as always, lots going on, and very much appreciate your pulling together the information, because I know that takes time too. So it's very helpful for us to understand all of that. And with that, we can move on to the next items on the agenda. The first one is the Executive Director's report, and I understand there's nothing additional to the report that's posted. Are there any questions for Executive Director Spicer? Nope, seeing no questions. The next item is representative update. So there's a couple of associations. The first one is from myself. The Calgary Police Youth Foundation report, and I don't have anything to add. I would encourage anyone, if they're interested in all the excellent work that gets done that way, huge amounts in terms of prevention. You can go online and see all the things they do on the website. Are there any questions for this report? Seeing no questions, the next report will be for CAPG, which is Commissioner Siddiqui.
Thank you. My report is attached. I would just make note that there was an excellent webinar a couple of weeks ago on excellence in police governance in Canada. And so if my other commission colleagues haven't seen it, it would be a good one for you to take a look at. And I think there's a couple of pieces out there that we can add to our strategy planning. Thank you.
Perfect. Any questions for Commissioner Siddiqui? No? Great. Thank you. With that, this is the end of the presentations and reports for today. We can now move on to invite the public guests who've registered to speak to do so. Our public participation process is designed to balance the desire to hear from the public with the need to keep meetings a reasonable length. Those of you who registered to provide a presentation will have 4 minutes to speak, followed by commissioners having an opportunity to ask brief and clarifying questions. Those who registered to ask a question will have 2 minutes to speak, followed by a member of the commission or Calgary Police Service having 2 minutes to respond. Please keep your comments to the topic you provided when you registered. And we also cannot discuss any complaint about a specific employee of the service or any interaction with the police. If you'd like to discuss a complaint against an officer or other employee, please contact our public complaint director or the Calgary Police Service Professional Standards section. And finally, a reminder to the members of the media that we'll hear from the public first, and then we'll hold a media availability afterwards for you. So I will ask if you can put through the first speaker, please.
Thank you, Chair. First speaker is Mr. Eddie Sue, and he has a question regarding traffic enforcement.
Thanks, Mr. Sue. Please go ahead.
Mr. Sue, if you're there, we can't hear you. Okay, he might have stepped out for a moment, so we will come back to him. We'll go right to our second speaker, who is Ms. Jordan, and she does have a question around police accountability. Please go ahead, Ms. Jordan.
Hello. So my question today will be addressed to Police Chief Neufeld. I attended the meeting last September and was impressed by your Pathways to Engagement presentation, which addressed the core CPS staff and employee concerns. I especially appreciated your highlighting of direct quotes, which clearly communicated the general frustration, which I think much of the public can empathize with in regards to leadership and management. One particular quote that stood out for me was this one: endless rounds of consultation that go nowhere. If you are engaging us, you have to show you are listening. I also wanted to highlight your own quote in the presentation video, in which you stated, our focus for CPS and our core business has to be responding to the needs of the community. Also presented in the September meeting was the 2022 Citizen Satisfaction Report, which stated that a top service priority is reforming how officers are held accountable and addressing police misconduct. In fact, 70% of citizen respondents rank this as an essential or high priority. I am excited to hear from you, Chief Neufeld, on your strategy for complying with this clear direction issued by the citizens of Calgary to address this core citizen need.
Chief, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Alicia, for the question. So this is a really important issue that you flag here, and we appreciate that. It's an important issue for the community and for us. And you referenced back to the employee engagement, or sorry, the citizen satisfaction survey being discussed. I think it was in October. And so this has been an important issue, even going back well before that. So when I first started with the Calgary Police Service, this was flagged as an important issue in 2019, and that was as a result of the Arkansas inquiry, which you may or may not be familiar, but you can certainly find it on the internet. But there were 9 recommendations, I believe, in their inquiry that were specific to CPS. And so one of the things that we had committed to doing was to make sure that we were responsive to those 9 recommendations and that we took care of them. And so to date, all of them have been satisfied. I don't remember all 9 off the top of my head, but they did relate to things like processes, to consistency of processes, to documentation, document due diligence, to training for investigators, talked about some of the processes, administrative reviews, which weren't really consistent with the act at the time. So those things were done. I can tell you that since that time, we changed the structure of the organization actually so that professional standards reports directly to me. That was a change in the organization. And so that what that enables is FaceTime each week with professional standards team and investigators, which provides opportunity to discuss new complaints that are coming in. It provides an opportunity to give direction on files or discuss disposition and go through disposition on files. So that's actually really important. We had a backlog at that time of about 400 files in our professional standards. And so we added resources to professional standards as well, recognizing that citizens were frustrated with the amount of time it was taking, and understandably so. And similarly, officers were frustrated with the amount of time it was taking to get through some of the complaint investigations as well. So we were able to add some resources to address some of that backlog, which has had an impact on timelines as well. Interestingly enough, we moved to what we called a hybrid staffing model. So if you think of ACERT for a second, the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, they have police officers and they also have civilian investigators. So we moved our own professional standards to a model similar to that. So we actually have civilian investigators today, so people who've not been police officers in the past, as well as civilian supervisors. And individuals who do quality assurance and stuff like that, that has been added on as well. And that actually gives two benefits. One is the obvious, the objectivity, you know, from the standpoint of people who are calling in, knowing that they're dealing with people and that people are involved in the investigation of their complaint that maybe were never police officers before. And then the other thing is its stability, so that we know that police officers, when they get assigned to professional standards, they stay for, you know, generally speaking, about 2 years as a commitment, and then they'll move on. And the administrative law aspect to professional standards is somewhat unique, and it's quite different from anywhere, you know, officers would work previously. And so it does take a while to get up to speed. And so having those civilian positions inside professional standards keeps that stability, even as officers rotate through. So I think that's been really helpful as well. We actually have the area reporting up through a civilian as well today, who's legally trained. That's actually added a lot as well to the quality of the investigations and the work that's coming out of there. And I would just maybe add too that in terms of transparency, we heard that as well, loud and clear, that that was really important, and we believe in that as well. So we created an accountability webpage where you can go on the website and you can find information about the process. You can find links to the Police Act. You can find information about the complaint process. You can find the forms. You can find information on the outcomes of disciplinary hearings. You can find dates for upcoming disciplinary hearings. All of that can be found on the website as well. So I think, you know, a lot of work's been done up to this point, a lot more actually on the docket there for 2023. And you'll also know that there may be changes to the Police Act in 2023 as well. And so we've been strong advocates for some of the things that we've heard that the public wants in terms of that work as well. So we're looking forward to seeing if that goes in front of the legislature and if those changes happen. So I think that in terms of what the public was looking for and the concerns that were expressed in the citizen satisfaction survey, I think we're in a very good place. There's always room to do more work, but certainly I think we'd started well before the survey last year, and under the guidance and the governance of the Police Commission, who sees all of the complaints and sees how they proceed through the system and that sort of thing. I think there's kind of a good two-step process there. So I think we're fairly well placed with respect to that. So again, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Is Mr. Sue on?
I will see Mr. Sue, you are able to unmute if you're ready to ask your question. Yeah, it doesn't appear that we have him here. So that's the end of our public questions.
Oops. Thank you very much, Ms. Jordan, and thank you for this part of the presentation. There were no written submissions today. And so I'd like to move on to the media portion of this conversation. And I'll ask Corwin if you can put those through. All right, we're just changing chairs a little bit, and anyone online who would like to sign off is welcome. And we'll go ahead with the in-person piece here. Thank you. So I think we're ready if you can find the first person.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. A reminder to our media partners, if you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. Darren Kraus, you please go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks for taking the question. Just want to make sure that you can hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Awesome. I have a couple of questions. First of all, it's around the pharmacy robberies. I was really interested to hear that the sophistication of some of these operations is pretty significant. Are you able to describe in some detail what you mean by sophistication?
Yeah, thanks, Darren, for the question. I think mainly we've seen in situations where we've been able to make arrests and we've been able to collect the evidence, just the level of, I think, preparation, and then also the level of violence, and also, I guess I would say, the level of confidence. So the amount of time that individuals are staying inside some of these places, again, these are not, given the age of some of the individuals involved, you were surprised that they would have that level of confidence and also display that level of violence, which would suggest to us that they may, in fact, be getting coached or be getting information from others.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go, and I apologize because I missed the crime stats portion of the report, but I did notice that residential B&Es, commercial B&Es, and prowlings are down significantly. Is there anything specific that can be attributed to at least over the past month?
Yeah, it's Chad Toffick here. I can respond to your question. So thanks for that. We certainly have a focus at the district level on break and enters and those who are offending, specifically in relation to break and enters and serial break and enters. So we have been focusing on those efforts. Hard to say if that's having the impact. I think also, you know, talking about seasonality and such, that does play a role as well, as I mentioned in the crime report. So I think it's a variety of factors, but one that we're monitoring closely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Darren. I see no other hands, Chair, and so that concludes our media portion today. Oh, I apologize. Adam Toy just got his hand up there. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thanks so much. Just wanted to touch on the drug court presentation earlier. A question for the chief. Given, well, first, wondering what your perspective is on a system-wide police, system-wide basis is of the efficacy of the drug court and whether or not you'd like to see it expanded. Yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. A good question. So I'm a big fan of the drug court, obviously a big supporter. The therapeutic courts, whether it be drug courts or Indigenous courts, I think have been a real success. Certainly the drug courts, you know, the Eric story that we heard today is not a unique story. And so I think, you know, it's very intensive though. You know, I think that's in the future, we would like to see more people be able to go. But as Sergeant Swartz pointed out, there is a fairly robust selection process for individuals going into that level of support. And so we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success and that the resources are there to support them as they go through. So certainly in the future, we would like to see more people and more capacity there. But again, as has been suggested, it's not as easy as just everybody can go. It's got to be the right person at the right time. I think it does highlight though here that every interaction with a police officer is a potential turning point.
And then a follow-up question in regards to that. I mean, I've seen a lot of chatter on social media recently, people complaining about we'll call it transients in the transit system and whatnot. I know police often support bylaw and respond to some of these calls. Is there any connection or support that can be done with this sort of community court system that could be applied to the to some of the problems Calgary seeing in the transit system, or am I connecting dots that aren't connected?
No, I think there's potential to connect those. I mean, drug court is focused on individuals with drug problems. So that certainly could overlap with some of the people that we're seeing, struggling on transit there as well. So that could potentially be a source of referrals as well. So no, I think your dots are fairly aligned. And I can tell you right now that as Sergeant Schwartz had mentioned, he's doing his level best there to get out to make sure that everybody's aware of those opportunities. And even those joint operations that you're talking about with transit and bylaw, we actually include community partners in those as well. So if individuals are struggling and need supports, and if they're open to it, that's offered to them at the right time. But the reality of it is sometimes people are at a place when our members are dealing with them there where they're just not open to it at the time. So that's certainly one of the challenges that goes along with this.
Great, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Adam. And now, Chair, I believe that concludes our media portion.